Hi, folks. It's a wrap for the 2026 Indiana General Assembly's legislative session. Lawmakers are passing a flurry of bills at the deadline. We'll catch you up on what's going to the governor's office for consideration and get your comments and questions right now on Prime Time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Prime Time. I'm your host, Ed Leon. As we come to you live here on a Friday night, the legislative session is in its final hours before coming to a close at midnight. There are a host of bills that have been sent to the governor's desk for signing, including bills on immigration enforcement, banning cell phones during the school day, luring the Chicago Bears across the border to Hammond, Indiana, and many others. There's much to discuss, so let me introduce my panel of informed policy watchers who are here to share their perspectives on the work of the 124th General Assembly. They are journalist and editorial writer from the Journal Gazette, Jeff Kovaleski, attorney and former Republican state representative from Fort Wayne, Mitch Harper, and chair and professor of political science at PFW, Mike Wolf. Gentlemen, thanks for being on Prime Time tonight. Well, it was a short session. Mike, what are your thoughts on how the General Assembly performed here?
Well, it was really a dramatic short session. Obviously started a little earlier than many people would have thought, and big questions dealing with federalism and everything. And we kept, a theme over the last number of years is home rule, how much localities are able to control. The state has continued to address in those matters. But I did think it finished with some real big bipartisan things, along with some of the controversial national effects that we've seen with immigration and other stuff.
Right.
So I think, overall, they packed a lot into a short session.
What grade would you give them? You're a professor.
I would give a B+.
B+? Yeah. Mitch, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the things that marked at the beginning with the redistricting battle was generally there's a stage setting. The governor or someone is setting the stage for what is going to be the big issue, what's going to be the theme for this session. That all blew past because everyone was focused on redistricting. And I think the public's probably coming out of this session a little confused as to what those big items were, because there was a basket of them. And I'm not sure all of them fit neatly into to a partisan space. I think the legislators will be scrambling as they go through the summer and fall.
You think so? Jeff, any of the bills stand out to you?
The one bill that got through today was House Bill 1038. That is the casino bill. It had gone through different stages of the legislation, and the original came out with adding a new casino, so it'd be 14 instead of 13. And there was no requirement for a public hearing. The senators had a problem with that.
Right.
Senator Brown and Dr. Tyler Johnson both were very strong when they said that we needed to have the possibility of a referendum for everyone. So the new bill that was passed includes Steuben County, DeKalb County, Allen County. All three will have to have a referendum this November to see if the voters are open to having a casino.
So let's say so it's on the ballot in November. We all vote on it. What if all three counties vote to have the casino in their area?
I think there's going to be some work to do in the Statehouse.
Mike, you're nodding. That's a big problem, right?
Well, it's a big problem, but it's a problem I think all three counties would like to have, at least some of the economic development people.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely. So you brought up the immigration bill. That was very contentious, and where talk a little bit about where you think the bill arrived at and how that's going to affect the
Well,
state.
I do think this is around the country. We see the nationalization of state politics, and clearly there are a couple of big ones. The immigration one that's been talked about because it happened earlier. More recently, also is empowering the governor to have
a military police force, they're calling it.
Exactly. And, that has more ramifications probably than what we see now. It makes sense on its face, except for the local community doesn't have to necessarily ask for it. And it also might be in the situation as we've seen around the country where local and state officials don't want a president to say this. Now a president of the same party can easily have the, a governor do this
Right.
in this
Well,
case.
it is under the governor's control.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Thoughts on the optics of something like this? In lieu of Minnesota and everything that's gone on there, the optics of having a military police force for Indiana?
I don't see the necessity. We have a National Guard.
Right.
We have a Indiana State Police.
By the way, this is I don't know if a subset is the right word for it, but it will be made up of National Guardsmen.
Right.
I just don't see any legitimate situation where that would be needed when we have police forces in counties and cities and the state has its own. I think we're covered.
Yeah. Mitch?
I think it's likely unnecessary too.
Yeah.
The men and women in the Indiana National Guard, they have other jobs. When they are asked to be pulled off for something that is non-military, as these would be, these instances that have been cited, that is taking their time away from them, not probably what a lot of them entered the Indiana National Guard to do. The federalization of numerous things that has been kind of a hallmark both this last year on the federal level, but a lot of these bills at the state, I think, are going to have some real ramifications.
All right, I want to go back to the immigration issue, but I want to invite our public and our viewers into the conversation. Our phone line is open right now at 260-969-2720, and you can also text us at 969-7230. When you text, please give us your first name and where you're texting from so that we know how to identify you. The immigration bill is different than the military police bill, right? That forces municipalities to cooperate, I guess is the right word, or cities to cooperate with the ICE forces when they're having operations in the area. Do they not do that now? Was there a need for something like this to maybe even do punitive actions towards a municipality if they don't cooperate with ICE forces?
I think there's been more cooperation than the conventional wisdom was, even around the United States. When Holman went to Minnesota, he said, well, I guess we're cooperating, which they always have been except for one county. So I do think that there's, the perception and where we're at is a little bit different. And the other thing about the local government that I think it doesn't specify municipalities necessarily. It could be other local forms of government, maybe school districts and others that are, which is, I think, where some of the controversy might be.
All right, let's move on to the Chicago Bears. All right, everybody loves the Bears, but this is a big investment for the state of Indiana, $1 billion to help fund a stadium in the northwest corner of the state, and for rich sports owners to bring their team. Thoughts on whether this is a wise investment for the state?
I have no idea. I don't know why they would want to get into this, but okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're being leveraged by the state of Illinois or the Chicago Bears against the state of Illinois.
I was in the legislature when we approved the construction of the RCA Dome, and we didn't have an NFL team at that time.
Oh, wow.
They did within a year when Bill Hudnett sent the Mayflower moving trucks out to Baltimore. And since then, the RCA Dome has been replaced with the Lucas Oil Stadium. These are huge projects, and there's certainly a lot of mixed research on the economic development effects of that. Frankly, I don't think the results of that research are too mixed. They've tended to be uniform. But in Northwest Indiana, I just came back from Chicago, listened to how people talked. It's interesting.
Is it a big topic of conversation in Chicago?
I think they're getting tired of the family that owns it.
Right.
And I did learn that I thought it would be a boon with the double tracking of South Shore Railroad, but it's evidently a 30-minute walk from where they have their stop to get to where this proposed stadium is to be. So
That's not so convenient, right?
Well, see, the taxing is, restaurant and beverage as well as hotel tax, but it includes Porter County, which is pretty far east of, and is unlikely to see much hotel.
Benefit.
So there are some local county government people that don't like to be included in that, especially if there's hotels right over the Michigan border or something that might be poaching on the benefits of this development as well.
Mike, as an educator, what are your thoughts on the idea of banning cell phones throughout the school day?
Clearly this is something that's been pretty popular around, and Indiana was out front to, and Fort Wayne, to give Fort Wayne credit, was a beta test on this. So I think the results, have largely been supportive of continuing this. How they do it, as somebody who has a high school child right now, we'll see. But look, we've got to try something. There's other things in here about, a big thing that also passed about, social media today, which I think was pretty bipartisan too. I think they're trying to do something when we're a little bit behind the times. So I give credit.
Explain
to
that bill.
That legislation really is, going to regulate any social media company that has over $1 billion worth of revenue. That they have to put their algorithms up and limit parental consent and age. So other states have done this, and Indiana is catching up on that. But I think there's an overall concern about this addiction, and other high-profile cases in Indiana of things going wrong social media-wise.
Yeah. The another bill that stood out to me that I'm not sure how it's going to play out is this one about no sleeping in public places, which is in many ways targeting homeless people. Any thoughts on how that bill is going to actually work out for us? Is it? I know we're trying to get ahead of the situation, the homeless situation. So, other places, Los Angeles, other states have really struggled with this problem. But to put homeless people in jail, I guess, that seems like that's going to affect the penal system in a big way.
It wouldn't be the first thing. I mean, I think the bill stipulates that the first interaction with police would be like a warning. The second one is like you've got to be 60 feet away from where you are. I do think the legislation is puts a lot of onus on the police to make decisions on the fly. And I think that most police departments are going to be sympathetic. I know ours will be, because they've been dealing with homeless people all year. So I know what they're trying to do, but it's pushing against making homelessness illegal. And I know that sheriffs do not want homeless people just taking up jail space.
Right.
Our jails are already overcrowded.
Right. The idea of making it a crime, right, as opposed to assistance, I guess, is where you can have different philosophies about that. All right, we have a question here from Mike in our audience. He wants to know our thoughts on Senate Bill 270, the Township reorganization, which we were just talking about in the kitchen back there before we came onto the set. Who wants to take a stab at townships?
Please go ahead.
Well, obviously there's always looks to how we can do things, and performance measures are always good in government. Whether these are the ones that we should be necessarily focused on, because township demands, and what is Wayne Township versus very rural township, is very different. And
so for folks who are not totally familiar with that, what's the issue here that some of the smaller townships, barely cities, are just disorganized, or they're not providing services? What's the problem?
I would say each year when the State Board of Accounts issues information to local prosecutors to proceed, it's a township, it's a town clerk treasurer. Somewhat that is because State Board of Accounts doesn't do the same work that they used to do with larger cities and towns. They've sort of said, if you hire a professional accounting firm and your city council signs off on it, we're not really going to come visit. So they're really concentrating on some of these smaller units, and the skill sets that some of these office holders have vary widely around the state. There are fiscal mismanagement concerns, and I think that's part of this. A wholesale elimination of townships, I think, has just been pointed out. Some of them are doing really good jobs in terms of poor relief and getting people plugged into social services. Adams Township would be another one. I think this isn't going to be fully operational to 2028, so expect legislation next year as people.
And the idea is not to get rid of them, right? It's to consolidate some with others, right? To kind of merge, some corporate mergers.
Well, and mergers between townships and the cities that largely occupy them, or towns.
Yeah.
They occupy so much space.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of unanticipated consequences that lots of folks are going to sort through over this next few months.
How do you guys think the Assembly measured up against the big agenda items that they went into the session with on affordability, kind of kitchen table issues? Do you think they were successful in addressing some of those? Housing, the costs of housing.
They certainly changed, local government's ability to put regulations. So now it's much more wide open, less regulations. So localities can't, opt out or say this kind of housing. So they've attempted to do it. Now there's some controversy on that, what that means over whether there's sufficient regulation. I think so. We'll see, but I mean, they certainly did address that issue, and I think it's a recurring issue around the U.S. So it's not something that can be. And there are cases where localities can put restrictions in that limit what the development is, and we've seen around the country, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and other places, really make drastic reforms to try and curb the housing costs.
Right. I guess one of the issues, one of the counter arguments to that is that there's no guarantees that those savings that the developers get trickle down to the pass down to the buyers, right? Because the housing is so expensive.
Although one of the good research projects recently said, if you build more housing, it lowers rents. It doesn't matter what kind of housing or what income level it's at. If you provide more housing, it will have an effect throughout the housing system.
Good.
And it doesn't make a difference of how expensive the housing is.
Yep.
Even
expensive
high-end housing frees housing for people who are trying to move up. So, yeah, he's right. It works.
Interesting. We began a little bit, Mitch, you began with a conversation or talking about how how this session has affected the legislators themselves. Do you think there's some, hangover or residue effect from the redistricting in December that has trickled into the session and colored what got through, what didn't get through?
Well, I think it's trickled into the Republican Party around the state. The Republican Party is going to have its state convention here in Fort Wayne this year. That ought to be interesting for local media. You've got some we've got some statewide elected officials who are up for election, particularly our Secretary of State, who've been somewhat controversial. I think there is a hangover effect, and it's being played out in Saturday breakfasts of party members and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and fundraising for these challenges, May is going to be very interesting based on some of this, and it was going to be interesting anyway. I think the establishment versus the more MAGA group or the party provides a lot of opportunity for challenges here.
And we're going to see probably a pretty significant voter turnout in November if we're going to have referendum on the casino.
You think that'll be the driver?
I do.
And the fact that, look, Democrats have done a good job of recruiting candidates for primary elections. Whether or not that in a supermajority state, whether that ends up producing competition in a midterm election year, we could see. November might be very interesting.
The top race in the state is Secretary of State. For the first time in a very long time, the Democrats are going to have a very well-funded challenger if Bo Bai wins their state convention, and that changes the dynamics of voter turnout as well. I think Democrats will be out, and I think they're motivated to go out knocking on doors this year.
Yeah. There are other bills any other bills come to mind that have passed to the governor? Do you think the governor will sign all these bills? You think he's going to have pushback on any of these?
I think the one that challenges executive orders and that has the LSA tell whether or not the expense is going to be within 7 days. He's not going to do anything passed uniformly and overcome. It's easy to overcome a veto anyway. So in this state,
it is okay.
And he didn't take long. He took a long time last year to sign bills. I think, Mitch, right?
Yeah.
This year he's been much quicker.
Okay. Doesn't he have 7 days? Isn't that the rule?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a law or a rule. So one of the other bills that passed, which I thought was kind of interesting, is SB 199, which is a directive to sort of, look into low-earning college degrees and try to do away with them. How do you feel about that, Professor?
There's been a lot of micromanagement in higher ed. We have a great university system in the state that is regional too, as we know from Purdue University Fort Wayne, Indiana University Fort Wayne, that the Commission on Higher Education will be looking at this. So it hasn't mandated this, but there's been a lot of changes at the higher ed level, and it's very difficult. I can tell you from the administrators over here to the faculty members, it's been a tough couple of years trying to keep up with this. And there are some potentially low-earning degrees that might be second degrees for somebody that might actually promote them, into a higher position. So
So you mean on their own they're not high-earning degrees, but they're cumulative to their
exactly.
skill set.
And if you cut those, then you're
right. By the way, the more research I did on this, I couldn't find any degree actually singled out. What are some of these low-earning degrees?
Well, I know that social workers are paid poorly. I know that early childhood education workers are paid poorly, and these are two areas where we have a severe deficit in workers. And this is the kind of law that could put us even further behind. And I think there was a piece by Michael Hicks from Ball State that he said there is no degree that someone can earn or in college that would make them on level with somebody who didn't go to college. I don't think that's true.
So every degree will get you higher.
I think so, over time.
Yeah. I mean, they're comparing it to the what a high school, just somebody who's completed high school would earn on average here in Indiana. There was some. I like the SB 243, and that's the Tax Deductions and Penny Rounding Act. Certainly, the tax deductions will be popular, right? I think for on overtime and tips, and if you're buying an American car, the interest on your loan is going to be tax deductible. But then then we get into the companies have the choice to round up up to the penny or down to the penny. Apparently, the government agencies have to round down. And that could cost millions of dollars in taxes over time. I didn't realize it would be so much.
It would be tough as a business person, I think, to round up every day. I think you would lose business for rounding up, so I think most people will be rounding down.
Yeah.
Particularly, I mean, a lot of businesses have used the rounding up as a
charitable.
Do
right.
you want to round up and it goes to so and so? How do you separate that if you're not? Your usual practice is going to be rounding down.
Yeah,
but you're right on the local government. They're already cheesed off about what happened last year, and this is it does.
It's just another one. Yeah. It's like
we'll
drip,
see,
drip, drip.
We'll see. The next year in the longer session, we'll see. I think some pressure from the local governments on a lot of this.
We got a couple of minutes left. Each of you. What do you see? If we put ourselves 6 months from now, what do you see as the outcomes from this session? Things that you'll remember, things that will really impact people, in the future.
I think the utility bill will affect people's costs, and I think that they will come down over time. I know that the Citizens Action Coalition, which is a utility opponent usually, they were very enthusiastic about the bill. They had some problems, but they were very happy with it.
And the bill automatically levels payments? Is that what it does?
Everybody would be enrolled on a payment plan automatically, but within 6 months, you can get off of it.
Right, okay.
So,
But yeah. Mitch?
Well, I think there's a lot more information to come about utility costs. It's an issue that is not Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
We've seen this in other states, but the controversies over data centers and the location of data centers will continue, and the effect it's going to have on electricity, on water quality is going to continue. Ohio just is issuing new EPA regulations that said discharge can go into any stream without treatment. I mean, these things.
Those big things. Yeah.
These are big things that people are talking about, and they don't really cut on a partisan level
big
one way or another. And I think there's going to be people who are looking at their utility bills, and it's going to be their own experience that colors it.
You have the last crystal ball.
I would say this child care. We're trying to put money in the low-income child care again.
All right. Hey, thank you all of you for being on the show. It was a great conversation. I want to thank my guests, former State Representative Mitch Harper, from the Journal Gazette, Jeff Kovaleski, and from PFW, Professor Mike Wolf. I'm Ed Leon. I want to thank you all for watching Prime Time. We'll see you next time. Thank you for being here.
The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne is made possible in part by
the Regional Chamber of Northeast Indiana advocates for world-class infrastructure, a competitive business climate, 21st century talent, and rural investment. One region, one voice. NEINadvocates.com. The Rogers Company has been conducting business in Northeast Indiana since 1944 as Rogers Markets and now as the Rogers Company with commercial property and real estate development. Pleased to support local not-for-profits and PBS Fort Wayne.
Funding for Prime Time on PBS Fort Wayne is provided by the First Source Foundation and the Knight Foundation.